Miracles come when we have clarity. And I am one of those people that am fortunate enough that when I had clarity around something, like the right people came into my life at exactly the right times.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very excited for this week's guest, Kelly Resendez. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Phil. How are you?
We are very blessed. We're doing great. Actually, I closed a deal today, so big day for us. But yeah, we just came off a couple-day event. Things are good. So, but we're gonna talk about you today, Kelly. So, just to introduce Kelly, man, quite the resume. So first, a mom of two kids, aged 19 and 21. So that's awesome. She was warning me, though, about college and some things I have to be ready for, but all good stuff. Executive, best-selling author of book Big Voices, a real estate speaker, just a true leader in empowering women to live a life of abundance, a co-owner of GoAbundance Women, just a lot going on. And really, I like just the mission, like what you're passionate about, helping others adopt an abundance mindset and overcoming self-sabotage to achieve their goals. So I want to get into that a little bit, but first I just want to hear your story a little bit, Kelly. Kelly, tell us about kind of your background, where you came from, how do you arrive to where you are today?
Absolutely. So to be honest, I'm just a small town girl. Grew up in Northern California, and I was blessed to have been born with one of those natural leader personalities, which meant I was extremely bossy as a kid. But no matter what we were playing, I had to be the teacher, the owner, or whatever it might be. So I think some of us just naturally came that way, and it served me very well through most of my career, from being in student leadership or things like that, and then getting involved in an ROP program when I was in high school, which I'm blessed to have done. And I highly encourage that for any parents, like, get your kids in young to give them, that level of just opportunity that they might not have if they wait until they're done with college. And so I stayed at that bank for 16 years. And it was back in the day, it was First Interstate, Home Savings, Washington Mutual, and really just was able to do that through college, and then went into the mortgage industry at a young age. So by 1999, I was doing mortgages, really serving the real estate community here in the Sacramento area. And within just a few short years was in the top 1% of loan officers. And when people ask me, like, what really was my differentiator at that point, is that I am a systems person. I like to look at anything and create recipes and rituals that allow you to delegate, streamline, really just think about things differently. And so as I was doing that in my business, I shared that with the real estate agents that I worked with myself, and started speaking to real estate agents to build authority. That's really how I exploded my business. And so for those of you that you're like, what does top 1% really mean? I was somebody that did 40 to 50 loans a month. And that was a lot. So I had a full team. I had people that I was leading, and, did really well. And then I had what I would say is my awakening in early 2004. And that came from my mom being diagnosed with dementia a couple years before, and no longer really being impressed by my worldly success, which I think most of us are all at a young age trying to prove, justify, or explain our worth.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden my audience was gone, and I had to kind of look at, like, well, what am I doing this for? My grandmother passed away, my sister started having some issues, and I had my first child in 2003. And just that combination of all of those major life changes for me got me to a place of recognition that I was not physically or emotionally well. I had external success. Like, I looked like I had made it, and on the inside, I was really miserable And that started my personal growth journey, 20 years ago. And it has taken me on a wild ride, Phil, of like figuring out I'd never had a present moment in my life. I was always in my head. I was never in the moment, to, getting my physical well-being dialed in and my emotional well-being. And then, over many years of just really chosen to transcend a lot of the experiences that I've gone through and share them with other people.
Do
Like
you
I'm,
think, so you talked about the awakening, just all those different events, but you had success, you had external success, as you said. Do you like, can you skip that? Like, is there a mature, I was having a discussion on this, so I'm curious as your thought process. Can you jump to the awareness of why and like where you got to without the external view of success? Or do you have to do it to realize it's not what it's all meant to be? Does that make sense? Like, can you skip
it
phase one
depends
to get to phase two?
if you were born that way and raised that way. So I think we're all born to be completely worthy. Like I think worthiness is our birthright. We don't need anything externally to validate who we are or what we love to do. But if you are raised by parents who are not awake to that consciousness level, then they're going to help program you the way that society wants to. And then you may or may not ever unwind that in your lifetime. I know plenty of people that will never get to the level of consciousness or enlightenment that many of us are at, which I don't judge. It just means it's not for them in this lifetime. I've raised my children extremely conscious. And so they won't need to go through that, right? They won't need to have that awakening because they already have been given permission to be authentic. They have already been given permission to not worry about what I think or what society thinks and to follow their heart and their purpose. And so, I would say most people in our generation, Phil, whose parents never picked up a parenting book or went to an event to, improve themselves, personal growth, although there were a lot of amazing people like Louise Hayes or Bruce Lipton or others back in the 70s, that wasn't as mainstream as it is today.
So you talked about consciousness and being awake. And one of the things you said is don't worry about what society thinks and just,
Yeah.
but what is consciousness? And I guess how would go a little bit
Can I
deeper on that?
describe
Like, how
that?
would you just describe what that means?
Yeah, I would say the first part about consciousness is the ability to be in the present moment. Like really be without thought for long enough to have an actual feeling experience. Most of us are having thinking experiences. Like I think that it's a beautiful day outside instead of just being like, oh, the sun's hitting my face and whatnot. What I would say one of the main ingredients of consciousness is the understanding that you are not your thoughts. Most people don't have that. They don't have that base understanding. And for me, finding Eckhart Tolle in
Yeah.
2004, like first book on my journey, like what a gift, right? What a gift for me to be able to realize that I had not had a present moment at that point in my life. And so I needed to be able to understand exactly what that meant. And for me, it was just realizing like, oh my gosh, my thinking mind had been who I was. I mean, I
It's
remember growing up as a kid worrying about what other people thought relentlessly, like being afraid of failure, being afraid of all of these different things in my life, feeling rejection on a deep level. And when we really get to a level of consciousness, we know everything is for us. Like we know that things really truly happen for us. And so that's what I really believe consciousness is. It's like embodying the present moment through a lens of feeling and being rather than from a place of thinking and doing.
Yeah. And if you haven't, I mean, it's been talked about, I think once or twice before, but the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is absolutely fantastic. And like
Yes.
the phrase there, you are not your thoughts, like almost gave me chills. It's just
Oh,
you have to read the book. It's hard to explain. It's deep, but it's so good. I read the book on a flight to Europe. I got there. I was super tired the first 2 days. And I
yeah,
was so present and engaged, it didn't even matter. I felt so good because I was
yeah,
like, okay, I'm thinking about being tired, If I'm tired, I'm thinking about being tired versus like I'm present and I'm fine. What am I
Yeah,
thinking about? So it
yeah,
was just immediately impactful. And I need to like I try to refer to that every year, like just go back through my notes. I
yeah,
need to really reread the whole thing, but
yep.
phenomenal.
So, and one thing I'd say on that is that, first of all, this is work. I don't want people to think like just it's a switch where you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm present. I'm in the present moment. We're unwinding years of just subconscious patterns that our brain has created in an effort to protect us. And so it takes a while. And I'll be honest, I wanted to find Eckhart Tolle after that first year. I was exhausted because I'd be like, am I present? Is that a thought? Is it, like I was just like constantly like it was like a blow up my life moment of recognition.
Yeah.
And so there are other books. I would say Untethered Soul
Yeah.
is much easier to digest, very similar. My book, Big Voices, is another one where I really go through some thought management strategies as well. But there is no one more present than Eckhart Tolle. And that, and if you read his story, he spent a year on a park bench. Like the man is like just embodies that essence of presence and is just a great masterful teacher for most of us.
The challenge I have with it, and I think the listeners can maybe relate to, is that you said this is work, but when I think about being present or being like, or silence, if you will, like just, I think about, is it not, am I not being productive? So like you have like hard
Which is
driving entrepreneurs.
amazing. Be unproductive sometimes. Like this is again neuroscience. And this is where, when I got on my path, I had to really understand like why are humans pushing past their capacity level, then burning out, getting overwhelmed, having midlife crises, like, stress and anxiety are at an all-time high, all of these things. And when you really look at it, it is highly addictive to be productive. We get a lot of dopamine from doing. We get a lot of dopamine from checking off the goals, from doing these things. But what people don't realize is that you are putting yourself into a hamster wheel of never enough. You will never be productive enough. If that's the measurement for joy, success, other things, like there's always going to be somebody ahead of you. And so, what I believe wholeheartedly, the path has to start with how you want to feel. Like when I end my day, I want to feel like I made a major impact in people's lives. And when you're in the real estate industry or you're investing, you get the opportunity to do that. You don't have to, right? You get to change lives. Like look at the memories that are created in a home where somebody feels certainty and safety and other things. And so when I really look at like how I feel rather than what I've done, it lasts so much longer. When I do, being in mortgage, being a competitive person, it was like crack, right?
Yeah.
It was like we had leaderboards that were published every day. You funded a loan and it got updated. And we had some of the top producers in the nation that worked for Washington Mutual at the time. And so it was like, no matter what I did, I was never going to be as good as Albert Saleh, who's one of the top originators probably in the world. And so it's really one of those things that when we can start to see, do we need to be productive? Yes. Do I have a propensity to be addicted to productivity and significance? If the answer is yes, we want to unwind that
Yeah.
because it's empty.
And,
It's
and I,
lonely and it's isolating.
and I would argue too that like if you're present, you're just being productive in an extremely different and in my opinion a better way. And I heard a quote and I love this, but your presence is your power. Like if you're really present with an employee, like just engaged in what they're doing and fully present, you're gonna have way more of an impact. Like they're like, oh, you're really interested in me. You're really interested in what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
They're gonna go get the work done. So your presence is your power. So
Yeah,
I like the way I've tried to reframe that is that if I'm present and engaged or just silent, whatever that makes me better at being present and engaged, I'm a better leader and more work will get done, more impact will be done overall, even if
absolutely.
I'm not doing it. And
Yeah,
there's work for 24/7. We can work
yeah,
ourselves
yeah.
constantly to check things off the list, but your presence, I'm a big believer, is that your presence is your power.
It absolutely is. And it's also something that you can use to refine clarity. if you're doing things where you really struggle being present, it should be an indicator that it might not be something you should be doing. And that's really what I did in my business and why I was able to do what I really loved. I love speaking. I loved impacting real estate agents' businesses and sitting down and doing, a 360 view of their activity and their database, just the lack of data analytics that I would say that most agents really use to be able to, create plans for attack and whatnot. And so as I approached my business, I was like, there's so many things that I'm doing that I don't love. How do I delegate more?
Yeah.
How do I get other people to help me do some of these things? And so when you're not present, it can also be that indicator.
I like
And
that a lot.
especially like with your kids, right? So it depends on the age of your kids. I kind of liken the 13-year-old son coming home one day to like, who exchanged my sweet little boy with an alien? Right? We didn't have as many things in common. And so being present became something I had to be super intentional about. What could we still connect on? He loved when we, went out and hit baseballs. He loved when we went out and threw the football or, played with the soccer ball or whatnot. I had to do more of those things. And so you have to use your presence also as like an indicator of what you need to be more intentional about. Because most of us, like whether it's watching a movie, being with a client, being on a meeting, we feel like we need to do so many other things simultaneously. And that should be a clue that like, hey, my brain's trying to take over right now.
I've not heard this before, and I love it.
Yeah.
This is absolutely good stuff. Just that, like, your presence is an indicator of what you're enjoying. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. So in 2004, you started to have this awakening. Tell me about what happened from there.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, it felt like my whole world was like turned upside down. Number my office was like, who is the person that's coming now? Because I went from, being this always working, always being, I would use a word as a leader, which I think a lot of people are going to relate to this. My team felt like I was always disappointed in them because there was never enough. It was just how come we didn't get this done? Why didn't we get this done? Why didn't we do that? Like, why did you respond this way? Why did you do that? And as I started to unpeel that onion of like, how do I really step into joy? Because I wanted to be joyful for my daughter. I wanted to be joyful. I didn't want the sleepless nights anymore. If they were sleepless, it was because she was waking up, not because I was thinking about the Jones file closing tomorrow. And so I went down this path of like getting my physical health in check. That was an amazing thing. And I think the one thing that I will tell you is that miracles come when we have clarity. And I am one of those people that am fortunate enough that when I had clarity around something, like the right people came into my life at exactly the right times. Whether it was spending a weekend with Scott Harris that ran Tony Robbins' wellness retreat that just basically educated me on the food and exercise industry like that. And all of a sudden I was like, light bulb, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that takes advantage of people's lack of, clarity or other things. And so got that done. And then just went down this path of like exploring every imaginable author, speaker, going to events, that kind of thing, and continued to do that for many years until I realized that, I loved what I was doing, but because I had gone so deep in personal growth and development, it had driven a wedge between me and other people. And so I felt a lot of loneliness in my life. And, fortunately, my company, which I made the huge decision to radically change my entire career in 2011. And I joined, a very forward-thinking, innovative company. We're a financial technology company now. We still have a mortgage division, but being with those leaders that were super growth and abundant mindset, driven as well was awesome, but I still was lacking something. And that's when I founded GoBundance Women and came together with some other ladies that were like, hey, this is a lonely path if you don't have other like-minded people to hold you accountable and keep pushing you to that next level.
Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about, but when if you don't have a network, like if you're a CEO or you own a business, everyone works for you that you associate with
Mhm.
every single day.
Yeah,
So, and I'm a believer that you shouldn't like, you should solve problems with, like, you shouldn't ever complain down, if that makes, you shouldn't really complain, but you shouldn't be shedding your problems, like
yeah,
interpersonal or like
yeah,
team problems on your team, unless it's their responsibility, but you shouldn't like be vetted. Anyway, you just, a lot of times the person at the top that owns the business, the CEO, whatever, doesn't have a, a group of people to go to. So to
yeah,
find that group of people that you can go to and you can say, hey, I have this challenge with my second in command or whatever it is,
yeah.
it's so important because I think I can be lonely if you don't have that. So
Yeah, and being
um
a female, here's the difference, and people don't recognize this. I have amazing male counterparts and friends, but they're not gonna invite me to lunch one-on-one. We're not gonna go golf together. I'm not gonna get the invite to go wakeboarding because it's just not, it would just not be appropriate for their, their relationship or mine or whatnot. And so when you think about it that way, it's like, that's what creates some of the isolation. We are outnumbered. There's no doubt, being in an executive level, we are outnumbered by our male counterparts. So just by a numbers basis, there's fewer people, right? And so it can be isolating, and you nailed it, that power of proximity is so important. It is part of your superpower. Like when you get to that point of like, I know how to ask for help
yeah,
and I know the right people to ask. And let me tell you, I am in mastery at this now. Like I give myself, and this is with all the humility in the world, I like nothing will hold me back trying to move something forward. It would not matter. I will find out how to reach the person, that's going to be in a position to be able to help move something forward. And I think that's what holds a lot of us back too, is that we don't recognize, like we really don't recognize when we network effectively and provide support to those people in our proximity too. Like that is where miracles happen. Like our nonprofit Give Power here at GoodLeap, which I am so absolutely amazed. We've touched 1.9 million people to date. And when I look at that number, and I know that 1 million people today have clean water on a daily basis because of what we've done, we didn't do it alone. We did it because we're in proximity to people like Mr. Beast. We're in proximity to people that have done amazing things in their career that are going to help elevate our message and really move it forward. So it goes beyond, I would say, that personal support system. It's also the professional support system, but I think that most of us get an F in asking for help. We don't realize that level of vulnerability and transparency and what we really need to get to the next level becomes like the way that we get to the next level.
yeah, right there. I mean that right there, like I was having a discussion with someone and just like a lot of relationships, a lot of our natural relationships or friend, whatever it is, can
Yeah,
be really surface level sometimes. I mean, a lot of relationships in general can be surface levels. Now, like
yeah,
people are like, okay, Phil thinks our relationship surface level.
yeah,
But the reality is a lot of relationships can be surface level because it's like we're putting on a front to show this is who we are when we're like, and in my opinion, the way to solve that is not to ask questions, but to be really vulnerable and transparent about your what's going on in your challenges too, because then it opens up the conversation. And I think there's a lot of people in mastermind networks and not that want that. They just don't realize, like they're just not ready for it or realize they're ready for
yeah.
it. So I
Most
think
people don't even know what a mastermind
that
is.
no idea. Right. Right.
In real estate, it's a more common term because, Brian Buffini's of the world or Tom Ferry's of the world have used it.
Yep.
Tony Robbins obviously uses the word mastery often, and
Uh-huh.
there's no surprise why it's used. It's a very powerful word when you're really trying to move people to the next level. But I would just say for anyone listening, most of us don't know what we need to get to the next level because we accept where we are too easily. Are you failing enough? Are you failing enough? And most of us aren't. we're going to hold ourselves to things that we know have certainty or a given, and we don't put ourselves out there enough in order to be able to take the risks that are needed to get to the next level. Now, next level is not for everyone. Like part of my abundance formula is no judgment. Like we cannot judge other people that choose a different path than us. But what we can do is just recognize that, you know, if I have a calling, if I have a desire, if I have a vision to really live an extraordinary life, and extraordinary is different for everyone, right? For one person, it might be, you know, spending more time at the beach, and someone else traveling the world. Like we all have a different definition of what it is. But like, if you want next level, like you're going to have to really make some commitments here to yourself that you're going to push yourself to that next level by getting involved with people and putting yourself into rooms where you're not the smartest, you're not the most successful, you're not going to be afraid to be challenged.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, just to kind of sum up the last maybe 20 minutes, even like getting clarity, you talked about clarity, like miracles happen when you have clarity. I love that. But when you have clarity, get uncomfortable with
Yeah.
it, the rooms you put yourself in. And if you're in a room where you're really confident because you think you're like, then you need to get in other rooms where you're not
Yeah.
so comfortable, and
Yeah.
you maybe have what some people call imposter syndrome, or like, where do I belong? Like, if you think, do I belong here? Then you are exactly where you need to be, because you're
Yeah.
around other people that are going to
Yep.
elevate you, and you're going to realize, okay, you do belong there. It
Yep.
might take a little bit, but you belong there. But doing that, and then it's also going to realize that these people that are doing things have failed. It is okay. It's going to give you the confidence to ask and take the risk. So just the clarity, the networking, and that taking action and failing is okay, especially when it's towards what's like tugging at you and what is clear that you want to do. So,
Yeah.
um, so you,
And and I want to say, having the awareness that your brain is lazy, addiction is lazy. Addiction is familiarity. Your brain wants to do what's familiar over and over and over again. It will guide you down the wrong path. The majority of people feel not enough. They know they haven't actualized their potential. And I am the person that wants to tell you, until you take your power back from your brain and you really sink into like who you really are, and you start to use it just like you would your iPhone or your laptop or any other computer system, like you will minimize your potential. You will fall in line with the rest of the people who never have the intention to be mediocre, but are.
wow, I love that. Can we, so maybe rewind and just listen to that like two more times. So
Yeah.
you did not fall into that trap. You were not lazy. You went after it. You networked. So kind of, I want to get to this abundance,
Yeah.
self-sabotage, overthinking, because kind of some topics that I think you have some passion around.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, for the first time in my life, I allowed myself, and I'm using the word allowed myself from an intentional standpoint. Like I allowed myself to feel supported. You know, I think people always had the assumption that I was so strong, I didn't need support. And that's just simply not true. You know, I have my on my knees moments too, and being in a place where people could help support me, hold me accountable, things like that has been just an amazing gift. There's obviously so many amazing connections that you get through an organization like Abundance Women, and you know, just feeling just ultimately blessed of what we've been able to accomplish. And I think what we don't realize is that that power of connection, when you articulate what you need in order to move your professional or personal career forward, people show up for you. You know, you're
Yeah.
firing up their reticular activator, they're looking for opportunity for you. And so, you know, I am someone that wants to change the world. Like I won't be satisfied with a few million people. You know, my mission in life is to really foster what I call world positive leadership, which is leadership that's good for the people and for the planet. I think when we take care of both, our company wins. You know, there's a lot of companies that have purpose over profit and do extremely well. GoodLeap is one of them. You know, we're a multi-billion-dollar company, and you know, the largest solar financing company in the nation, and soon to be hopefully, you know, largest home improvement and credit card processing company too for home improvement. And so what I would say is that for most of us, we don't recognize like when we are in true abundance in our life and we have this outlook, it magnetizes us to amazing opportunities. Like just absolutely magnetizes us. And what I would say is that it's a choice. We all came to adulthood with a belief system that we accidentally picked up. Like nobody questioned what your parents said. Maybe you had a little bit of doubt or what the church said or what whoever it is said along your journey. And, I'm a big proponent to hit Control Alt Delete on your entire belief system. Start with your vision, do your goals, and then create the beliefs that are going to get you there. And so some of the beliefs that I really, share and teach are that you're the creator. You have to take radical ownership of your journey, positive and negative. I'm the creator of my own success. I'm also the creator of a lot of my own suffering. When I notice that I don't hold standards or keep boundaries up, man, I can pretty much have a direct line to a little bit of self-suffering that's going to be coming right around the corner. And so I have to take ownership. Everything becomes a lesson, right? It's that adage of life happens for me, believing in unlimited possibilities. And this outlook is something that, I would tell you creates a massive amount of opportunity for you. One of the areas that I really believe in is, and we talked about it before, is mastery. So for myself, mastering speaking and the power of language and really just getting to that next level of emotional intelligence as a leader. We started with 100 employees here when I joined, and now we're close to 1,500. And so having the ability to see and be self-aware of what the company needs has become something great. And I look at it and I'm like, some days I can't believe the opportunities that God has given to me as a result of this commitment to mastery. And then you're like, well, of course, like I did that. So like, I'll give you just a little story because I love it. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. But DLP Capital, I'm sure you know the guys from DLP Capital, hired me to speak at an event for them in Tennessee. And John Maxwell was speaking at the same event and happened to come hear me speak, right? Is it a coincidence or is it magnetism? Is it a miracle? I had been praying for somebody to be able to help get my voice to the next level. And John is doing exactly that. Like he ended up taking pictures. He ended up taking notes. We met afterwards. I spent a week with him in Orlando. He shared my work with my quotes and everything when he spoke to 10,000 people when we were at Growth Day. If you've not been to his IMC or Growth Day events, I would check them out. They're amazing. We continue to have conversations about how we can mutually support people. And I was talking about abundance mindset. I mean, what an amazing topic for him to hear. And his feedback for me was that was the best. Not great. It was the best abundance mindset and practices presentation I've ever seen. And so for most of us, we are right there if we commit to mastery. When you commit to mastery, people start to notice. You have the credibility, you have the authority, and you have the attraction. This isn't the secret manifestation thing. There's a lot more involved than just having an idea of what you want to do. It's the intention and action combined together that creates the miracles that we all need to get to that next level. And so for anyone listening, when you truly embody abundance, and you'll be able to read my next book, probably early 2025 on abundance and abundance practices. When you really embody abundance, holy moly, Phil. Like it is like, oh, like everything is orchestrated to support what it is that you're doing.
And I think it's in every, like, how do you, I mean, I've heard someone say, like, if you completely flip how society does things a lot of times, or how the corporate world does things, or like employee, like if you completely flip on its edge and you really embrace abundance, like just go out there on just trusting it and trying it. If you embrace it, I think, like, you're agreed, holy cow, like it will work out well. So, and it's just, society has trained us of the opposite, but abundance mindset works in everything.
Everything. But most people don't realize how easy it is to be a victim, how easy it is to blame, whether it's the institution, the person, the situation. You know, one of the greatest gifts that I always tried to share with real estate agents was that if you lose a client, you're already going to feel like you just don't ever lose a client again. Like just changing your language. You know, I released that opportunity. You know, I just opened space for another one. Like it really does change how your energy shows up in the world. But most real estate agents, when someone says no, they spend the next 48 hours thinking about it instead of picking up the phone and calling their database and asking for referrals. Right. And so we've got to get like, that's a level of mastery. Like if you're going into real estate, you are going into the greatest place to learn the lesson of rejection. You were
Yeah.
rejected more times than anyone, you know,
Yep.
maybe a door-to-door salesman, you know,
Yeah.
but
You need to be.
like you have to understand like this is just a resilience building activity, and everything comes back to like, you know what, I'm not going to worry about other people's opinions of me. That's been one of my greatest lessons in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I've definitely had to unwind the people pleasing part of me. And I think a lot of women struggle with that too. And it's just as you look at all of these opportunities that we have throughout our life with anything that we struggle with, it becomes like an adventure. And I always say, go deeper for 3 months on one thing at a time. Like if you're really struggling with imposter syndrome, go deep on that for 3 months. Only read, only listen, only talk, focus on that, get mentors, like really go deep and then go to the next thing. Now,
And
some things are so deep, you need to focus on it for a year.
right. But if you take that approach, like it's like well, 3 months, that's such a long time. Okay. Quarterly, do that quarterly. And then like
Yeah,
we actually, so I was having a different discussion, but, you know, someone went to a, I think 20-year class reunion, like upper 30s, 40 years old. And you really start to see the divergence of what, you know, who has taken care of themselves, who hasn't, whether that's their
yeah,
mindset or skill set or health or whatever it might be. And if you think like, so 20 years, quarterly improvement on an area, 1 year, okay, four things. That's pretty phenomenal, really.
yeah.
Times 20. If you think about the difference in someone over a 20-year period that focuses on that versus
Mhm.
doesn't, quarterly is if you can do one
Yeah,
amazing thing on a quarterly basis, you will see the compounding impact of
yeah,
that in 5 years, much less incredible, like the compound effect, literally in 20 years, 30 years. So you also
absolutely.
talked about I don't know if these are connected, but you referenced self-sabotage earlier, and I
Yeah,
want to get into that a little bit. And what like I I think I know maybe what that
yeah,
means, but I
yeah,
don't want to you
yeah.
really know what it means. So tell us about self-sabotage, and I sense maybe you learned this the hard way by doing it. So maybe
I'm an
some
expert
examples.
though. I am an expert on self-sabotage. That's why I can talk about it. I think we all are. Like, let's be honest, like every one of us has had an intention that we've destroyed ourselves. Whether it's, you know, someone wants to show up in a great state for a job interview and then they just go out for a drink with their buddy the night before, and next thing they know, it's midnight and they only got 6 hours sleep and they're really not at their peak state for that interview, right? Like everyone does it. And the most important thing is that you have the self-awareness to know what your preferred method of self-sabotage is. So first thing, where does it come from? It comes from our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind keeps an inventory of every memory. The downside, although your memory center keeps all your memories, this specific area is only going to focus on things that are negative that it believes affected your survival. And so most of us don't experience like accurate fight or flight, right? Like if I go into fight or flight, what your brain wants to know is Phil just went into fight or flight. Phil was in danger. Well, it doesn't know the difference if Phil was out in the wild and you had a bull chasing you, or if Phil was at a negotiation with a really unruly investor that you felt the same way. And so it's going to keep that, and it's going to help you try to avoid that in the future. And so it's our subconscious mind trying to protect us. And so where does it show up for most people? Procrastination, laziness, people pleasing, perfectionism, not asking for help, not being willing to be vulnerable. We all have different ones. And so what I would tell you is that when I really look at self-sabotage, the greatest gift that you can give yourself is sharing it with other people, is taking it out from the darkness and saying like, like I spoke on being a recovering perfectionist for like 15 years straight, every single, like, so my brain heard me every day say, I'm a recovering perfectionist and I no longer need to worry about what other people think. I'm still working through that 20 years later, though. I still tend to worry too much about what other people think. And so I am learning how to continue to navigate that level of sabotage in my life because I am radically honest. I am going to be a truth speaker, whether people want to hear it or not. And quite frankly, not everyone's going to agree with me. And so it just becomes something that I ritualize, right? Oh, I just got a really nasty email from someone. That's amazing. Let me just watch how my body interprets it right now. Oh yeah, I did. I got a little bit of that flutter in my stomach and I had a desire to go eat a large pizza, right? And I can watch it because it starts this chain reaction for most of us that ends up leading to shame.
And does this, so like best gift is to share it with others, but what if, so people have one go-to, or like they self-sabotage themselves in a lot of different ways and
Oh,
just start.
many different ways. I would say most of us. So my goal worksheet that I use has every category. Like, how does Phil sabotage himself in business? Well, you're checking email too often, or you're, because we get a lot of dopamine from
True.
checking email and people don't realize it. And it's like, how often do you make money checking email, right? Like what, 1 out of 200 emails is someone that says, hey, I want to buy a house, Phil. Now, contracts, I get it. Those are different. I just mean like true email.
Yeah.
And so you want to look at every area, like with health. How do I sabotage myself? Laziness, right? If I don't manage my energy at work during the day, which this is a very energy increasing activity, if I don't manage my energy right, by the time I get home, I'm not going to want to do cardio. So how do I override that? Number one, my trainer gets to my house 3 days a week at 6 a.m. before I've used any energy for work so that I know it gets done. Because I know I have like health on the laziness front. Like, how else do I, like, I don't like taking vitamins for some reason. I know it's good for my health. I sabotage my health. I like think about it. It's like, why
Like,
am I thinking about it and not just taking it,
yeah.
right? And so there are certain things like that, like personally with your kids in relationships, like you want to look at every area separate because most of us have some protection system. Now you might call it ego, subconscious mind, fight or flight, you name it. You can call it all different sorts of things. But for me, I always try to get, how do I get a strategy to overcome it while I'm simultaneously trying to heal where it probably came from to begin with?
Yeah. You, how do we build self-awareness around these things without it? No, we're not going to be perfect at this. We're going to continue to do this to some level, I think, right?
Always.
So how do we do this? How do we like build the self-awareness, but without
Yeah,
beating ourselves up too much? Like,
yeah.
like, I don't want to focus on the like, I want to
Nope.
be self-aware, but I
Every
don't
day's
want to.
an opportunity. That's the first of all. There's no shame in what you're doing. There's no shame in self-sabotaging. It's just your brain. You haven't had a level of mastery over it yet. So like overthinking could be a way that somebody really, really sabotages themselves. So what we're gonna do, when I look at when I do my quarterly goals and I really am present and I set some intentions for myself and make sure like, am I in my highest, most authentic self? Is this really what I desire? I write my goals down and then my plan. I let it marinate for a week. I come back and make sure that I'm still in agreement with what I believe was my highest and most authentic self. Sometimes I make adjustments, right?
Mhm.
Then I'm like, okay, now it's time to execute. A week goes by, I'm going to check in. Have I executed? If I haven't executed, why haven't I executed? Well, I said yes to too many things. I didn't look at my calendar before, I realized that, man, I only had one open night this week to be able to do cardio because I had a work event and then I had another event. Like I can't hit my 5 days of cardio this week. Like, what can I do different? Well, maybe I just need to adjust the goal a little bit. Maybe I'm not really sabotaging myself. I just haven't been thoughtful about what I can really do. So I'm setting myself up for failure. Right. And so it's got to be this constant thing. You can also solicit advice from your or feedback from your wife, from your kids, from your partner, from your employees. Like, how am I doing on this? Like, I have a tendency to blah, 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 blah. And I would love for you to be a mirror to me. I'm giving you permission. This could be within your pod in GoBundance. This is where I get a lot of this great, juicy, like, feedback
Yeah.
is, they'll be like, hey, last month you said you would never lower your standards again. And it sounds like you're lowering your standards again. How do you want to respond to that? And then
Yeah.
it's up to me to be like, you're absolutely right. I am. And, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for holding me accountable to that. So, I've got a sabotage management system that I just kind of put together for myself, which is like, just document it for every area. And then just start to just work on one thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you procrastinate on doing something, number one, I always use procrastination as a clarity building exercise. Am I procrastinating because I hate doing it? I need to delegate it. I need to use a virtual assistant. I need to use somebody else to be able to do this, right? And so maybe I'm not really procrastinating. The second thing is, did I not give myself a strong enough deadline? Because there's really no such thing as procrastination. Like, you can't really procrastinate past October 15 when your taxes are done, right? Like, that's like a hard deadline. Most people end up getting it done. Most of us don't put hard enough deadlines on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the comments on it, just to go back to, like, we talked earlier about just being transparent and authentic with people and sharing. So, like, if you're self-sabotaging yourself, starting to talk about it, because talking about it is also going to build not just your self-awareness, but also people are going to hear it. So you're going to build almost an
Yeah,
accountability system. So,
yeah,
and I want to start to wrap up a little bit, but there's another topic that I can relate to too, and you've referenced it a couple times, so just maybe a minute or two. But you've talked about people pleasing and overthinking a lot, and just how do you frame overthinking, or how have you tried to conquer that?
yeah. So, again, it goes back to that you are not your thoughts. Seeing your thoughts as separate from who you are. In my book, Big Voices, I talk about a thought management strategy, which is just sorting and qualifying thoughts, right? What thoughts are really coming from my highest and most authentic self that I should take action on? What are ones coming from my little voice, which could be your ego, your subconscious, your parents? Like, we don't know where some of the voices come from. Sometimes I have thoughts where I'm like, what on earth is that? Like, no idea what that is, right? It just came to me, and it's
Yep.
like, I just file it, right? I don't let it take space in my life. Most of us don't know what our brain's doing. Like, our brain is programmed to ruminate. Well, when does it ruminate? It ruminates when we don't have anything else that's really going on, like right before you're going to bed, or when you're, in a meeting or things like that. And so the one thing that I would say is that there's no secret recipe to thinking less other than being present. So meditation has been the most powerful tool that I've used in my strategy. I really try to meditate every night and every morning, which really just puts me into a much better state. I keep space before a meeting to like set my intention for how I want to show up on this podcast or whatever it might be. And then I really document some of the thoughts that all kind of come back to the same thing. Like, if you have a lot of fearful thoughts, like about the market or, anything else, it's just document them and come up with something that's a replacement. So my go-to replacement self-talk is everything's always working out okay for me. Like, literally, I will think about something, and then when I'm struggling, it's a line from Mercy Me song, which is, the world's not falling apart, it's falling into place. It repeats in my head every time I think about something I don't want to. It
It's
is
interesting.
go-to.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've overthought. I'm not saying you, but we've overthought about this moment right now, and it's okay.
Yeah,
like we've overthought for the future, which is now, or even we overthought about the past before that, and it's okay, right? So yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears, kind of wrap up with some questions. I really want to keep going for like another half hour, but we can't do that. I want to be respectful of your time. But if you just really step back and reflect, how does what you do, how does it make you feel?
Oh, you know, I know I'm doing holy work, Phil. Like I truly do. Like I am doing God's work in helping people increase joy and reduce self-suffering. I get to do that. Like I am so blessed. Like literally there are times that I am in awe of how much opportunity I've been given, both positive and negative, that have brought me to my knees and got me to the moment that I am today. And so I feel just incredibly blessed that I get to go out there and do this work.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That is very touching.
Thank you.
Amazing. What do you think, just a minute or so on, like, what are you, I think you probably just answered the question, but like, what are you really excited about and what is going to be the
Oh
key
my
to
gosh.
success for that?
Yes. So here's what I'm excited about. Number one, I've got a documentary that's coming out with some
Oh,
other people that's called The Frequency of Miracles that will be out in 2025. So I'm really excited about getting that out. Getting my abundance book out, still title not 100% set yet. So excited about that, and growing GoBundance Women, and really just continuing to expand the things that we're doing at GoodLeap and at Give Power, and changing, you know, like so many people don't realize 2 billion people are without clean water today, and without our efforts here and in conjunction with so many others, like we just wouldn't be able to do what we do. So I am excited about life. I'm excited about being here, and you know, I'm excited too, just to share with your audience, you know, we dug into self-sabotage, but I've got a 3-part series that they can listen to at downloadthepod.com on overcoming self-sabotage, and really just taking it to this next level, because there are a few ways, especially in business, if you're a business owner or somebody that wants to grow and accelerate success in business, I really dive into those in that episode.
awesome. Amazing. And first of all, I want to come back to that, but thank you so much. Like, just, wow. I mean, abundance, first of all, your story, and just you know, we didn't plan on talking about presence and the power of now and all this, just the knowledge on that, but it's just it's so important. And I've been having that conversation more, and I've been trying to embrace the mindset, like your presence is your power too. And just, so I just appreciate your perspective on being present, abundance mindset, self-sabotage, overthinking, just your story, your approach to life, what you're doing is so incredible. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Is there anywhere else that you want to point people for? I mean,
absolutely. You know, you can always check out GoBundanceWomen.com. You know, there's a men's side, which Phil is a member of as well. And I just think if you're a person that wants to up level your life, check it out. We'd love to have a conversation with you and just share a little bit more. And then just the downloadthepod.com will get you directly in touch with me as well, and just kind of put you into my ecosystem so that I can share what's coming out next. So Phil, thank you for your presence today. Super amazing opportunity to connect with you. So
this was awesome, Kelly. Thank you so much for the Muller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Signing off. Thank you for listening to the Muller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Muller Real Estate, visit our website at www.mullerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.